Yes, yes, yes. What's going on? Another episode of Dicey World podcast. What's going on, everybody? Today, for episode 10, we have a very special guest for this episode. He's a sports reporter, an NBA insider, a college basketball analyst and expert. You may have seen him or heard him on 92.9 The Game, CBS Sports, Sirius XM, Fox Sports, just to name a few. And most recently, Dicey World was privileged enough to have him uh, write a great article to educate and inform us on this past draft, the 2023 NBA Draft. Uh, Proud to call him my homeboy, real special guy, my dog, college expert, college basketball expert, my main man, DeShaun Tate. Let's bring him in.
Iron Mike,
Yeah, there he is. D Tate, what's happening,
man.
baby?
Listen, man. I appreciate you for having me, man. Look, it's always a privilege, honor to be able to
Mm.
join you, and talk some basketball like we always do. And I'm just ready to educate the people. We got deep minds, inquiring minds want to know what's going on in the world of basketball these days, and I'm looking forward to kind of breaking a lot of all this stuff down with you.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you, man. We're gonna get right into it, man. Well, just before I do that, let me just show everybody your information where they can catch you, man. Let's see here. There you go.
And I'm
Check my
glad you capitalized that. I'm glad you capitalized the S2, man. That's a lot of people's first mistake.
That's crazy, man. All right, bro. So you wrote a blog for the DiceyWorld.com, man. Great reviews, bro. I sent it out, shared it to a couple people. Great reviews, great feedback for your insight and so forth. You called it the 2023 NBA Draft Snoozers. And it's so funny because one of the last lines you wrote on the article, you said these are the fringe second round snoozers. But to your credit, though, bro, 4 out of 5 players you named were drafted and 2 were drafted in the first round. So kudos to you, bro.
Nah, I appreciate it, man. I mean, listen, it's just trying to have an eye for this thing, man, and just learning the waves of how the draft typically goes. It's crazy when you start talking about NBA drafts because the league doesn't draft nearly as much based on who can come in and make immediate impacts. It's really
Right.
about, let's grab this guy, high potential, stash him away 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years, and see where he
Mm-hmm.
can be after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's so many different elements and layers to the onion when it comes to draft and just the NBA in general, just the way that the game is, kind of trending in a direction towards international style of play. It's not just about the rugged, physical play anymore. It's about the finesse and the long wings, the guys who could do, multiple things, and point guard, point forwards, and point centers now that we're seeing win MVPs, and just all these different things, man. Seeing the average age of the NBA now, I feel like because of AAU, all these guys playing together, knowing each other, seeing each other, every single weekend on these AAU summer circuits, and just developing that bond, friendship, camaraderie, chemistry amongst one another, and just maybe that's some different reasons. Now I'm trying not to get too long-winded, but some different reasons behind why I feel like we're seeing guys trying to help one another win championships these days than it is trying to prevent guys from winning championships. So we can go on and on and on about
No,
that
that's a
all
great
day long, but
that's a great point you brought up. I was just going to ask you, do you think that's hurting the brand of basketball with all this fraternizing and guys, getting to know each other? Like, is that like dumbing down the competition between each other? It's like you want to take down this guy and rip his throat out, but nowadays these guys are discussing dinner plans and playing video games and everything. Is this like dumbing down the competition, you think?
yeah, exchanging uniforms and everything else after the game. But
Right.
I don't know if I would use the term dumbing down the competition, but nonetheless, like it is that way to a degree. I mean, listen,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of buddy ball and a lot of shaking hands and a lot of helping guys up off the floor. You're not seeing as much. Hey, I don't care if this guy is my teammate, you know, in the NBA or not. But when we get to this Olympic style, I'm running through his chest. You're not seeing that kind of stuff
Right.
as much as you once were. And it's just a different level. A lot of people like to blame LeBron or blame this guy, blame that guy. I'm not sure you can blame any one guy, but just the average age of the league is becoming younger and younger, and it's appearing friendlier and friendlier. And I think that's some of the reason behind why we're seeing, the tables turn a little bit between international and, the play over here in the States when it comes to Olympics and so forth. You start looking at some of these guys on the international level. Obviously, we're going to get into the draft, but, on the international level where you got guys like Luka and you got guys like, Giannis and obviously Jokic and Embiid. I mean, these are all guys, we're talking about MVPs, recent MVPs, over the waters MVPs.
Hmm.
And sometimes seem like these guys are a little bit tougher than the big bad United States on what we used to be considered and the reputation that we used to have. So I think some of those things are some of the reasons behind why they're benefiting in today's league.
No, that's a great point, man. You just dropped a lot of knowledge right there. Now, one of the players that had a lot of hoopla in those summer circuits in which you mentioned was Imani Bates. I mean, he had so much hoopla going on back in the day in high school. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't he like a two-time national, maybe three-time national player of the year in high school, coming out at Ypsilanti, Michigan? So he had a lot of hype, and he went to Memphis. Things didn't really pan out the way he wanted to, and he transferred to Memphis, kind of like lost a little momentum. But he's the first player you named on the block. He was drafted in the second round, the 49th pick, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I just want to quote you. You put his biggest question mark, or the biggest question mark, with perhaps the highest ceiling. You said he has the highest ceiling. Wow. Why do you say that?
I mean, Imani just got a crazy skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I think that first of all, the NBA brand and style of play and just what it is in general and everything it stands for is something that is more needed the professional side, even if it's not NBA. I think he's going to flourish a lot more than he is in college. And most people would probably say, well, that's not really saying very much considering what he didn't do on the collegiate level. But I just think that his style is a little bit more geared towards, how it's played on the NBA, level. Even more so just the fact, I mean, he's a dynamic scorer. And we could sit here and the elephant in the room is obvious, the maturity and, talking about, the incident with, the gun and this, that, and the third. And, we can go back and forth on that all day, but I think it's between the ears for somebody like him landing in a spot like a Cleveland. Maybe not the most ideal city for somebody like him. Maybe not the most ideal team. I think it's great being under somebody like a Donovan Mitchell who's able to take him under his wing, show him the way, show him how to win, and so forth. I mean, Donovan Mitchell is a winner, hasn't won a championship, but if I'm not mistaken, prior to arriving in Cleveland, he's led the team, led a team to the best record in the NBA for like 2 or 3 straight years. Having all these other young guys on the team, I don't know how much that's going to help Imani because I always kind of felt like he needed someone, like some veteran leadership, more veteran leadership around him. Played a lot of daddy ball growing up and not really knowing how to play the game. Now, I say that, it's not that he can't play basketball, but just knowing how to play is something different. You can have all the talent in the world, and I'm rooting for him. I hope that he does well. I think that he will. Obviously, that's the rest is really going to be up to him. But we definitely wish him the best because I think we could be having conversations about Imani Bates, in the next handful of years or so, being one of the best talents that we see in the NBA.
Absolutely agree. And that you made a great point too. Just going back to the youth in the league, and Cleveland is pretty much young themselves. And you mentioned Donovan Mitchell, but he's still relatively young. He's what, 24, 25, 26 years old. Do you see him, taking Imani under his wing, being his vet? And if so, like, how do you see Imani fitting in with this team? I know you said maybe Cleveland isn't the best ideal location for him, but do you think he can get some burn this year? Can he contribute? Like, how do you see him fitting in with this team?
Maybe. I mean, not a lot. I think you're going to have some instances where you're going to see some flashes. There's going to be some moments that is going to be like, Bones Highland type,
Hmm.
but then there's going to be some moments where I can't think of the kid that was at UConn and then left and now playing with the Charlotte Hornets.
Kemba Walker.
Um, no, a guy that was just recently drafted,
Oh,
and
okay.
I can't think of his name right now, but where the expectations for him was high, but he just really didn't get off the bench very much.
Hmm.
And all these guys are going to develop, at their own pace. I mean, for example, I saw Cam Reddish here in Atlanta. They picked him up number 10. He got a big standing ovation. Picked in the lottery even more so over DeAndre Hunter, who's currently on the team and clearly did a lot more to deserve his contract than Cam did. And Cam was let go after 2 years, barely even probably two. Went on to New York and things wasn't working for him there. Now he found himself a home in Portland and he's looking a lot better. But I think some of that is not just, from a maturity standpoint, but also getting a chance to develop his game, learning how the NBA works because it is a business.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to grow up and play this game professionally. And we all think that it's amazing to be able to go play basketball, as your job and do that every day for the rest of your life. And that sounds great until you have to overstand the grind that comes with it and the business aspect that comes with it, and the pressure and the temptations and the little bit of everything. And I think ultimately situations like that with Imani Bates is somewhere he's got to show that and prove, that he has grown from his history.
Wow, that's a great point, man. Absolutely. Now, you didn't. I don't think you mentioned it in the blog, but do you see like any like NBA comparisons to his game, or like how do you see him, shaping out in the league? Like, is there anybody that jumps out to you who you can like comp him to?
Not really. It's not that he has his own game. I think he got things in his bag that he hasn't had a chance to show, but made some poor mistakes to where he couldn't show it and just still didn't give himself a good opportunity to really get into the flow of his game based on all of those things.
Hmm.
Things not working out everywhere that he's been pretty much for the most part. And even when he was at Eastern Michigan. That's his team, and he's going to have the green light and do what he wants to do. But I don't think that's always the best situation
Hmm.
to learn basketball and learn how to be, a basketball player and a basketball pro.
Right.
So as far as comparisons, I don't think I really can think of anyone right off the top right now, just because you haven't had really the chance to see his game really grow or develop and see what it can turn into to be
Right.
able to give that same comparison. So, of course, most people are going to say, Kevin Durant, and they're looking at his size and they're looking at his ability to put the ball in the basket, amongst other things. I think when you watch him, you just naturally see him. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be him, nor is he
Hmm.
going to accomplish all the same things as him, but it reminds me of Trey. Trey never
Hmm.
wanted to be like number 30. He wanted to be like number 13, Steve Nash. But you can't help that when you see him, he looks like 30. It's kind of that same way with the playing style for Imani Bates in comparison to Kevin Durant. But he's this phenomenal talent that got a lot of pressure on him, and he's had that ever since he was young. And obviously, being on the cover of Sports Illustrated and everything else to be the next greatest, thing. And
Hmm.
I mean, he got his opportunity to prove it yet again. He just got to make sure that he's doing the right things to try to get out there and prove to everybody what type of basketball player he can be and what he really is.
That's a fact. Wow, Kevin Durant, that's a high ceiling. I hope he's closer to Kevin Durant than Lenny Cook. That's an old school name right there. He didn't really pan out, but he had a lot of hoopla coming out of high school as well. A partner of mine asked me to like give Imani Bates a comp, and I kind of just threw this out the hat. I said Sean Livingston a little bit, a little wiry dude, kind of fast, can handle. Maybe the jumper isn't as good, man. But if he can, strive to be like Kevin Durant, that's saying a lot. Now, the second player you had listed on your snoozers list for the blog, you wrote Julian Strother. Am I saying his name right? Julian Strother?
Yeah.
All right, first round pick, 29th overall to the Indiana Pacers. Now, for Strother, you wrote, put him anywhere on the floor because he's a basketball player in the positionless era. Wow. And then you comped him to Draymond Green. That's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. What about his game specifically do you see in him that compares him to Draymond Green?
I think it's a mixture between he and Grant Williams for Boston.
You did say that.
When you start looking at the body type and you start looking at how nimble he is, and he's just one of those guys that's kind of like it reminds me of Charles Barkley, where you look at some guys sometimes and it's like, and this dude, he a little chunky, he a little bit too slow, but these guys can move their weight around with some of the best of them. Now, he's not necessarily the chunkiest guy in the world by far, by any means, but the fact that he could just do so many things on the floor, maybe not anything great, but he could do a lot of things well when it comes to having that high IQ, much like Draymond, when it comes to being able to be a point forward, much like Draymond, when it comes to being a leader, much like Draymond, when it comes to defense, much like Draymond, having a good balance between that and offense, much like Draymond. I mean, these aren't necessarily guys that's going to score it in bunches, but they can defend guys that are bigger and smaller and the same size as them. So that's always going to be a plus whenever you can do that. So rebound the ball well. I mean, all of these things are solid things. Maybe not amazing. They don't do it amazingly. But, they're all things that I think can help contribute to not only any NBA team, but also contribute to adding a number to the left side of the result column.
Straight dubs. And that's a fact, man. It's so funny. Uh, when you said Draymond Green, the first thing I thought of were like the intangibles, toughness, basketball IQ, leadership, defensive presence. And you just named like all of those qualities just right there. So that's good to hear. All right, moving on. Noah Clancy was picked in the first round, 21st by the Brooklyn Nets out of Alabama. For Clowney, you wrote a true blue collar, bring your construction hard hat and lunch pail every night with no complaints kind of fella. And you commented him to wow, Al Horford and Kevon Looney. Now, do we mean like, old school Al Horford or the new Al Horford pulling from three? Does he have a little jumper in his game right now? Does he need to
Definitely
develop
do.
that? Oh, he does?
No, he definitely got some of that. I mean, is he this knockdown shooter that you got to make sure if you don't do nothing else, you got to have a hand in his face and on him? No, he's not that kind of shooter. But you remember that Al Horford didn't develop that outside game until later in his career. This is something that I think, number one, you didn't really have to be too concerned with at that point in time when Al Horford was coming out, because that was not the same type of game that we see that it is now. That's something that, Noah Clowney has been trained to develop and learn, that he's going to have to, have those things on the next level, as the game has definitely evolved since then. You're talking about the body type and the size. I mean, just guys is just going to be a workhorse, a utility piece, and going to play in this league for 20 years.
Wow.
Potentially, just being just that guy. Another name to mention, like a Serge Ibaka, that type of guy that you just know what you're getting every night. There ain't gonna be no questions about it. He's gonna be coachable. I mean, Julian Strawther was a guy that I had seen, probably ever since he was about 16, 17 years old. And I very much so go that far back with Noah Clowney, who played on, here in one of the on the circuit and for one of the better, premier, AAU programs, the Dickerson Celtics, with a buddy of mine, Damon Stevens, who does a great job, stepfather of Kobe Simmons, and just a basketball purist, and had the opportunity not long ago to spend some time with, Noah's dad at dinner with the team, parents, and everything else, and pick his brain a little bit to learn what kind of special kid he is. And I mean, you got to remember something. I know there was a lot of hype at Alabama this year based around, Brandon Miller, who was the number 2 pick, and deservedly so. But everything that was happening off the floor with him and the team, and I'm not saying that Noah Clowney was this, verbal leadership guy, vocal leadership guy, but you always had to have that glue piece that when things maybe, got under pressure and guys was going to put a little bit more pressure on, who the hell is this Brandon Miller kid think he is, man? I'm about to go out there and shut him down. Or some of the other guys that played well at Alabama and got drafted as well, but you still had to have that piece that as everybody thought they were going to shut a guy down and they threw a jump shot up there and they missed. They getting ready to try and go the other way with it, but Noah Clowney is the one coming through with the rebound for the putback, or Noah Clowney is the one that's bailing them out on certain possessions, or with this guy or that guy not having a great game, coming in and doing some of the dirty work. So, he's just somebody that I see that part of his game translating, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, now, like, how do you see him fitting in with the Nets? Will he get some time? I mean, are there minutes available? Like, how do you see him fitting in with Brooklyn?
I think there will be. You put him with someone like who's a kid that went to Georgia. I love the way he's just really just catapulted his game. I can't think of the name right now, but when you got bigs up front, I know Day'Ron Sharpe from North Carolina didn't really do as much on the NBA level like he was expected to. Nick Claxton is the name that I'm thinking of, by the way. But
Oh, he went to Georgia?
when you correct.
Okay.
When you got guys like him, who's just going to, I mean, he does the dirty work. He came in, he's young, he's got to learn, but he's just steady growing. It might be at a snail's pace sometimes, and it might be at a hair's pace sometimes, depending on what it is. But I think you can kind of see the kind of quality and value that you get from players like that, and putting those two next to one another, especially with their youth, shot blocking ability, and just hustle points, doing all the little things, getting on the ground after loose balls and really going after the glass, coming down off of those rebounds, outlet passes, and running the floor like a deer, or being the last guy back on the trail after the ball goes up. And everybody's just kind of standing there looking for the ball. And then here comes these guys running back as a trailer and just flushing it down. That's just who these guys are. They're workhorses. And I think ultimately that's what you're going to see, a really good combination in tandem. I think they still got Cam there as well. Both Cams, I think. And then, obviously with Bridges there too. I mean, they got a really good young nucleus over there. And I think that's something that ultimately is going to bode and being the best for them. Once you cleaned house, you don't have to worry about the Kevin Durant's and the James Hardens and the Kyrie Irvings, and guys don't want to play and guys want to be traded. You got guys that just want to play and want to learn. I think that's something that's going to help, having all those guys. They're going to be able to develop a different type. We see some of these young teams. We've seen Cleveland a couple of years ago. I think Orlando is on their way up. OKC, another one of those young teams that I think
Houston,
can
Detroit.
surprise some people. I would imagine at some point, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this week or next week, this month or next month. But I think over time, the Brooklyn is going to be just fine now that they are kind of reshaping and molding the way that they want their team to be.
I agree with that, man. Like, to your point, they flushed out all the drama, all the Kyrie, KD, James Harden drama. They have a new team, new energy, new blood. You have young dogs who are willing to get in there and improve themselves and earn their stripes, get a reputation. And anyway, if you can like rebound and have a great defensive effort and have a great motor, you're going to find some time in the NBA. That's what coaches like to see from their players, no doubt. All right, man, let's go on to Keontae Johnson, second round pick, number 50, to the aforementioned OKC Thunder from KSU. Now, for him, you wrote he's a willing defender, add in versatile physical contact embrace, rebounding, and a solid scorer with a 40% three ball. What's there not to love about that? That sounds like a classic 3-and-D in the NBA. It sounds like you can plug him in right now. He might get some minutes like Keegan Murray or somebody like that, man. I like this pick. What you think about this pick to OKC, Keontae Johnson?
I think it's good. It kind of reminds me of, some of those instances where you can have somebody like who's a guy that's been talked about over the last 24 hours, hot on the market, like a Tobias Harris, can play between the 3 and the 4-ish type of player. There's another guy that played for the Hawks quite a few years ago. Who was the dude, Dice, that had all the emoji tattoos on his body?
I know you talking about, light-skinned dude. Crap, he played for Philly too.
Think of his name.
I think he went to Philly.
I can't think of his. He
I
did. He
know.
played in Atlanta for a little while too. It's gonna kill.
Yeah.
It's gonna. My brain is
Right.
all scrambled right now. But he kind of reminds me of that mode. You know, a guy. When it's time to go small ball. You know, he can play the four. But for the most part, I think he's a perfect 3-and-D type of guy. He can shoot it a little bit from the outside. Amazing, no, but I don't think there's a guy who's being drafted in this year's draft who can shoot it amazing from three either, especially from long range on the
Mm-hmm.
NBA side, whose name is not Grady Dick. But
Hmm.
you know, I do think that you know, somebody like a Keontae Johnson he's also going to be a worker. As you can tell, for the most part, those guys who I've mentioned, they're going to be workers.
Yes.
They're going to be hustlers. And those are the guys that I like because I know that those are guys that can always stand out and going to make an impact on the NBA level. We already know about the Brandon Millers and Scoot and, Victor Wembanyama. We know those guys. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody's not gonna be those guys. So who's the guys that are gonna be willing to sacrifice their bodies and do the little things? Gonna be able to provide some balance equally defensively and offensively. And when you look at that Kansas State team this year, a lot of people, you know, obviously talked about the point guard play and some of those little things, some of the flashy things, some of the shiny toys and the shiny objects, but nobody's going to talk about the dull toy that nobody hardly ever plays with. But you better believe when that new toy breaks and that old toy is still sitting there ready to be played with, it's still intact. It looked like it been through everything. I call it a Nokia phone. Remember back in the day when you had the old Nokia phones? I
Yeah.
don't care what you did. Like those boys was always working. Like you could be running from the laws, hopping fences, and fall out your pocket, fall in the concrete on the mud in a puddle. You picked that boy up and kept
Yeah.
going, and it just always worked. It was screen was scratched up. You can barely read anything on it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was working
Oh,
if you needed to
reliable.
make a call.
Mm-hmm.
It was old faithful. You know what I'm saying? So like that's what he reminds me of though.
Okay.
Like he's always gonna be, you know, maybe like a Jay Crowder or something
Mm.
along those lines. You know, somebody
Mm-hmm.
that's always gonna be solid. And just the story. I mean, we don't really have to go all into detail, but most people know about the situation and you know when he collapsed on the floor at
Yeah.
Florida and then there was a big
Yeah.
lawsuit situation.
Mm-hmm.
The way that he's come back, I mean, there's no question about who a comeback player of the year in college basketball is. This guy has won, you know, SEC championships and he has accolades on that. Maybe not championship, he has accolades for sure in that conference. Got, you know, accolades on the Big 12 side as well. Those are two Power Six conferences and making, you know, all conference for
Right.
both of those conferences. You got to
Right.
be a hell of a ball player, McDonald's All American, the whole nine, and he's
Mm-hmm.
strong, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I just don't feel like you can go wrong with a player like him. And Indiana secretly had like a really good draft. I can't really
Yeah.
say as much on the Bilal Coulibaly situation. But when you put, you know, somebody like I'm sorry, not Indiana, OKC. When you
Mm-hmm.
put somebody like maybe not as much Hunter Tyson from Clemson, who was very underrated in college basketball this year, but you take Derek Lively, who was one of the top players in high school coming out, and the defensive minded, you know, wingspan, broomstick arms that he has, kind of
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of like a Willie Cauley-Stein. You pair those guys
Mm.
together, and I think they had themselves a damn good draft.
That's a fact, man. And OKC, they're right there knocking on the doorstep, man. They were in the plan this past season,
Yeah,
and you gotta remember,
Shea,
and Chet
Giddy,
Home,
yeah,
and they getting Chet Holmgren. That's like a bonus pick, man. I mean, he didn't even play one
Chet,
minute last year. So I'm saying Chet, he might be,
yeah,
he
that's
might
it.
be the rookie of the year. I mean,
Rookie of the
shout
year
like
might be
straight.
rookie of the year.
I'm right there with you, DT. I mean, shout out to Wemby. We're gonna talk about him in a minute, man. But I'm really feeling Chet, man, for rookie of the year so far. And that name, I had to redeem myself for Nick Claxton. I didn't say Claxton's name because I didn't know he went to Georgia. But I think we are talking about Mike Scott, right, for the Hawks with the emoji
Mike
tattoos.
Scott.
Yeah, that was Mike Scott.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now the last player you listed. Now this is why you weren't 100%, but he did get signed to a two-way contract. Was Ricky Council? Yeah, I think he got assigned to a two-way contract from the Philadelphia 76ers and the Delaware Blue Coats. And that's going to lead us to the undrafted players, man. There are a couple of people that were not drafted. I was kind of surprised. I want to read a couple of names and just get your immediate reaction, man. I mean, I think they did eventually sign like two-way contracts, summer league contract, and so forth, man. But I was very curious to why Drew Timmy out of Gonzaga. What's my man's name? I'll just say Oscar, the player of the year,
Oscar
SEC.
Shibwe.
My man, yeah, from Kentucky. And you mentioned the Kansas State point guard, Marquise Noel, Noel, right? Marquise Noel.
Mm-hmm.
Those three dudes were not drafted. What are your immediate thoughts of them not being drafted?
I mean, one thing that you got to be able to make room for in this league, at least I like to think, is winning. And that's something I can at least say about, not only all of those guys that have contributed to their programs, but, Oscar Shibwe is just a straight workhorse as well. He's going to do all the little things and he's going to be physical. I think he's still a bit raw in terms of, his offensive side. Defensive side is pretty good. He's going to have some block shots amongst some other things. And he's physical and he's athletic. There's some spots for that on the next level. But in terms of his skill set, is not something that he necessarily really has. I think that he excelled on the collegiate level because he's bigger and strong. Maybe not bigger in terms of height, but just bigger in terms of just mass and size than so many other guys. And he's not playing against small fries by any means. I mean, he's definitely outworking other guys. I think that's what we've seen also out of Drew Timmy, who is footwork is crazy, soft hands, good footwork, and willing to outwork you. Can't shoot can't shoot a jump shot. I mean, can't throw a rock in the ocean from the boat. But he's. I mean, it does give you that vibe and that feel of Tyler Hansbrough again on this level, where you lack the athleticism. Some of those guys are going to be just perfectly fine. Everybody. I mean, Jakob Poeltl isn't the most athletically gifted guy or anything like that. Sometimes it is situations. If we've seen Drew Timmy in a San Antonio Spurs uniform and it actually ended up working out, would anybody be surprised? Probably not. Another one of those guys we just seen recently within the last couple of years probably that remind me quite a bit of Drew Timmy was like Luka Garza. You know what I'm saying? Just guys like that just probably can't even jump over the phone that me and you are recording this on. But still got a high IQ. And if that ball is going out, bouncing out of bounds, the average guy is just probably not going to put forth 110% effort to run and go get it and save it. But this guy will. Right. And those are the little things and mentalities that you have to have when you're talking about landing a job at the next level. Because, like we said, this is a business. This is not 2K. This is a different level. Guys are feeding their families off of this. Guys got mortgages to pay. Expensive lifestyles to live up to. So, all those things make a difference. It's good to see that Drew Timmy is going to get a shot somewhere. What it will result to, I don't know. I got a good feeling, but I don't know. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And if not nothing else, one thing about him, man, is he's a winner. And there's not a lot of guys that's chased down as many rebounds on the collegiate level as he has, especially for a guy his size. He doesn't have the Oscar Shibwe size or nothing. Marquise Noel is just a wizard. I mean, you're talking about heart. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about, size, right? It's about, the height. It's about the heart. It's not about the height. Obviously he's a little erratic sometimes. Sometimes he appears a little bit out of control sometimes. Kind of reminds me occasionally of those little things at the car wash that be going off crazy all the time. You see outside the car wash sometimes bro be kind of, erratic like that. But it works well for him. He finds he finds a way. It's curious to know if he's Damon Stoudemire or if or Damon Stoudemire, Dana Barrows, some of those type of guys, or if he's Tyler Ulis. I don't know. But one thing he has is this right here. Yeah. And as long as you got that can take you as far as you need to go. So there are going to be some liabilities on defense. That's just what it is. But the beautiful thing on the positive side and optimistically for him is that in this league, there's so many different guys that can come in here and be and benefit based off of no matter what size you are. You know,
Right.
back when we were growing up, it was like 6'2", 6'3" guard. If you ain't at least that, it ain't gonna work. Unless you're
Mm-hmm.
very special like a Spud or Earl Boykins or Muggsy or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Very rare
Mm-hmm.
exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
This league, you can have the body type of a Chet Holmgren and Kevin Durant, or you can have the body type of a Zion Williamson and Boban Marjanovic. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like you can be the tallest guy, you can be Bobo, you can be, you know, whoever you want to be. You can be all the way down to the smallest guy on the floor. So
Mm.
um, I hope that it goes well for all of these guys because they all had a major impact on the collegiate level during their time.
No, that's a fact, man. And when I read those three, and thanks for that, man. You just dropped some knowledge right there. When I saw those three players, the first thing I thought about, and you alluded to this earlier in the show about the whole youth movement and the direction that the league is heading, man. I said, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like, well, I believe that Drew, Timmy, Oscar, and Marquise weren't they all seniors or at least juniors coming out of college, like at least 3-year players.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like,
upperclassmen. Yeah,
yeah, that's like an impediment or, something that's looked bad upon. The older you are in college, like the lower you are in your draft prospects and status, man. It's like just totally going against the grain. You talked about back in our day, you had accomplished players like a Grant Hill played 4 years, even Shaq played 3 years when he came out. You know what I mean? But I feel like the older you are, regardless of your collegiate stats, man, if you're like older than a sophomore, you're gonna suffer in the draft. That's how it appears to me.
yeah. It's like, what's wrong with him? There got to be a red flag attached
Right.
if he can't come out and be one and done. So,
Exactly. All right, man. So you from Michigan, the murder mitten. I'm from Michigan too. We love the Detroit Pistons. I gotta ask you about our pick. How do you say his name? Ausar Thomas. What's his name, man?
Thompson, yeah.
Yeah, Ausar Thompson, man. What do you feel, man? What's going on with
I don't know how to feel yet, but I don't get a good feeling. This is just being straight, just being straight about it. You know,
him?
this is, and I mean that's got to be expected for guys who took the route that he took. I mean, you see the
Hmm.
first 4 or 5 picks, everybody got to that point, and by a different way. Some by international, the number one pick. Some by the collegiate
Hmm.
level, the number two pick. You know,
Hmm.
some by the G League, the number three pick, some by a new startup program in OTE with the fourth and fifth pick.
All right.
Um, so, you know, with that is going to be some question marks. Who were
Hmm.
you playing? You know,
Hmm.
how well did you, obviously played well. And I know that Kevin Ali, who's running things over there at OTE, had some really good things to say about, the Thompson twins. That's expected, especially being a representative and ambassador of OTE.
Hmm.
But I see a lot of athleticism. They say you'll be really hard pressed to find an athlete like either one of these guys. His brother Amin is more along the lines of a point guard or primary ball handler, if you
Okay.
will, where
Hmm.
Asar is more of a classic wing, who I think can defend, who is an athlete. Definitely needs some work on the jump shot, but again, I mean, we can talk all day about guys needing assistance on their jump shot, but there's just not a lot of guys who I think are NBA ready to take shots, let alone under pressure on the biggest stage
Hmm.
that this game has to offer. So, um, but the ideal size and measurements and wingspan and all these other things, I think he definitely fits the bill. And keeping fingers, toes, eyes, T's, and everything else crossed. He's going to be able to bring some contribution to a Detroit team who desperately needs somebody on the ball that can, get some stops and stay in front of some guys. And I mean, Detroit is just one of those teams right now that's just, you had Ivy who, is certainly not a point guard. Maybe not the ideal shooting guard, but Cade didn't play all year long. I love the Isaiah Stewart and pairing that with Jamin Duran, who I think is, right there to be one of, the better front court players. But in this particular market of which we are, talking about in Detroit, The thing that I am happy to see is that they're embracing the culture, the old Detroit culture. They're not winning a ton of games. I think they were last in the NBA this year in terms of record or whatever, what have you. But they fought and they did everything that they could to compete. There were some times when I was like, "Oh yeah, let me put my ticket in real quick and go against Detroit." You know, and Detroit proved me wrong. They came away with some wins against some teams, this year. I mean, they'll do that from time to time. They'll beat a Golden State. That ain't Golden State just sitting back saying we ain't gonna play guys. Like, unless you're telling me that guys are going out there and losing on purpose, then we having a totally different conversation. But Detroit was competitive. And they were also showing that they were not competitive as well. So I just think that it's going to take some time. Some people ask how long before you think that we could realistically have conversations about them contending in the playoffs, not contending for a championship, but just contending for them making multiple playoff appearances consecutively. I think that's anywhere between 2 to 5 years.
Okay.
So it's going to take some time for them, that's for sure. But we're going to, in between now and then, we're going to see a lot of consistently inconsistent. But we are going to see some moments where it's like if they can just do this every night, or one thing we've gotten to a point where so much this year you see this Detroit team and you're automatically quick to go against them. I think we're slowly going to start trending in the direction of being like, you know what, everybody's going against them, but I think I see something in their competitive nature a little bit different. Don't ask me why, but I'm going to pick Detroit on this one. And everybody's going to be surprised to see, like, what did you see in that Pistons team that made you pick them in this game? You kind of got to have an eye for something like that. I don't know how many times we're going to see that this year, but I think we're going to see it more and more over the course of the next few calendars.
I'm right there with you, man. You dropped a lot of information right there. I do agree with you. I saw a lot of Pistons games last year. They were highly competitive. They definitely got up for the big games. I do remember the game in which you mentioned, the Golden State game. At least in Golden State, I believe they beat the Warriors. I'm so glad you broke down the difference between the twin brothers, man. I did not know that, the brother who was picked before us, the Pistons, is like a primary ball handler. And then Ausar is the finisher, 3 and D kind of guy, which is great. I'm glad you broke that down because I feel like that's what Detroit needs. We don't need another ball handler. You already mentioned Jaden Ivey. You mentioned Cade Cunningham. They're going to be your primary ball handlers. We need somebody, like you said, to stay in front of a player, not get left behind defensively, finish on the break, man, and just bring that energy and that athleticism. I like that. In regards to your point about the culture change, you're right about that, man. We are getting back to the old bad boys and '04 Pistons days, man. And I think the catalyst, the nucleus of that is going to be Monty Williams. I'm so in love with that pickup as a coach, man. Monty has showed me in New Orleans or Charlotte and Phoenix, man, what he did in the bubble. And then the next year in the regular season, taking those Phoenix Suns to the finals, he can change the culture. Now, how long his voice can be fresh, because it tends to fade out like after 3 years, you get kind of tired of it. And then, his teams kind of quit on him, kind of like Nate McMillan. You bring in Nate McMillan, he's going to do a quick turnaround after like a year and a half, 2 years. That kind of like his messages falls on deaf ears. Yeah, it fizzles out. It falls on deaf ears, man. So if Monty can get this program turned around, man, I'm definitely with you, man. I feel like we can win between 35, 37, 42 games this year and compete for that AC and possibly play in. I'm just glad, man. I'm just glad that the way you broke down the twins, I feel like, okay, Houston got the better sister, to use like a color purple analogy. They got Nettie and we got Sealy. We got ugly Sealy, bro. But based on what you just said, we didn't get ugly Sealy. We got a cute sister, man. So that's all I can ask for. All right, man.
I was gonna say in this last piece, I think the key next for the Pistons is gonna be, I've ragged on Killian Hayes long enough. And it's good to see him kind of turn the corner a little bit this past year. How many of that had anything to do with Cade Cunningham not playing and Ivy, just trying to do anything and everything you can to make sure you didn't get your spot taken by him. But the other element is ultimately just going to be the health status and development of guys like, Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. So I think that's what's next on the,
Hmm.
on the Pistons, to-do list.
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of teams in the past had twin towers, from like the Houston Rockets with your Kelvin Sampsons, not Kings, and your twin towers in San Antonio, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. I feel like we got a three-headed monster in Detroit, like you said. Marvin Bagley coming off the bench. I love Duran. He's a rebounding machine, gets blocks, man. He's like a taller Ben Wallace to me. You know what I'm saying? Ben Wallace was like
Yes.
45 inches, and then I'm not totally, done with James Wiseman. I feel like he just needs a place where you can like nurture him and develop him and have patience. I feel like Golden State put too much pressure on him, and that just wasn't a good fit, man. I think he can like take some time and learn, go through like the growing pains, actually getting some playing time and learning out there on the court. And I've got faith in him and James Wiseman. But speaking of big man, and that was a great point about Killian Hayes, because I was this close from like giving up on him, man. So
I am that close to giving up on him.
all right. Now, the number one pick, man, as we end this segment or the end the show, man, with this last segment, how much faith do you have in Victor Wembanyama or Wembanyama?
I think I'm somewhere anywhere between about 60 to 70%.
Mm,
And honestly, that's kind of dropped from one point of where I was, just because, it is very important. Nobody's really concerned about his skill set and measurements. I mean, he's doing things that we've never seen before. And I know that there's a lot of, people that have talked about him being the biggest prospect since LeBron James. I think we tend to forget how much we were in love with Zion sometimes when he was coming out, but nonetheless,
hmm.
that's neither here nor there.
That's a
But
fact.
I
That's a
think
fact.
he's in a perfect situation. He's in the perfect market. It's San Antonio. My own reasons behind why I feel like the lotto was be kind of rigged sometimes, which I know is a different talking point, but
I can't hear
it'd
what
be
you say.
nice if we
I can't hear you. What you
I
say?
could.
Okay.
It'd be nice if we could see the ping pong balls drop the way that they used to, instead of just, hey, we already know with the golden envelope and all that type of stuff. But that being a whole different conversation, I will say enough to say that it's hard to go against the size and the skill set and him doing things that we've never seen before, much like what we saw to Zion Williamson, just two totally different skill sets
Mhm.
and sizes amongst other things. But um, I mean, anytime a guy can come down and shoot a three off a one leg floater three and miss it and get his own rebound and dunk it without the ball hitting the ground. I mean, that there's something to say about that. But can I sit here and on your program where I know people don't do nothing but speak facts and
Mm.
look at you and tell you that I know for a fact that he's not Ralph Sampson? I can't do that. I
Mhm.
don't know. That's why I felt like, somebody like a Scooter Henderson was has the lowest bust potential of anybody in this
Mm.
draft.
Mhm.
But what Wemby has the opportunity to do, especially playing for a coach and in a system and a scheme and in a market of which he does, that's perfect for him and his personality and his growth and his development and getting the opportunity to load manage and other things like that. I think it's going to be beneficial. And I think that stuff like this is good for the league. So the
Mm.
ultimate elephant in the room question is when about staying healthy. I mean, he just really made Chet Holmgren look like an afterthought at this point. Um, as soon as his name was mentioned and people, even start having conversations about him, which that's an interesting matchup within itself. It should be anyways. And if I'm Chet, I got all kind of, chip on my shoulder for these things, exact reasons too. But, the question is always going to be about the foot problems, the ankle problems, the weight problems, not the same kind of weight problems as Zion, but the other weight problems of not having enough. The good thing about him is that he's just so long and lanky to a point where, yeah, you may knock him off his space. You may knock him off the block, or hesitate, pump fake and get him up in the air and try and get him to draw a foul. But he's just so long that you might knock him off his block, and his wingspan is still so long, he still might be able to catch your block. That's just, from a defensive standpoint and the way he handles the ball. And I think that stuff is great. But ultimately, I think just much like Porzingis and Yao and, some of these other guys, you ultimately won't find out exactly who this guy is until after he returns from an injury. But I think if you want to see, before Summer League and before the NBA season starts, you had an opportunity to see when Victor Wembanyama, if you haven't seen him, you have a chance to see what his skill set looks like already. And that guy wears number 10 in Orlando, and his name is Bo Bo, and it's very similar. So those are just kind of my initial thoughts on Victor Wembanyama until we got a chance to lay eyes on him. And don't kill the kid if he doesn't do all the things that you thought. I mean, that's all it's going to be for guys like him. And it's not his fault. He grew 7'3.5" tall. But, for guys like him and Bronny and some of these other guys, you're going to have your chance to see them for the very first time in games that don't matter, won't count, exhibition, pickup, summer league, pro-am. And you're going to kill the kid if he doesn't go out there and have 100 points on his first night out. And I don't think that that's right. So let's just keep those things in perspective.
So that's a fact, man. So what do you consider a good year or a successful year for Wemby individually? I mean, yeah, playoff success, or if they improve like 10, 15 wins, that would be great, man. But specifically for him, like, what's a good year for him? For
Healthy.
Wemby. Okay. Like what, 60 games,
Healthy.
65 games? Because I think in order to qualify this year,
in an 82 game season, I think that Wemby, I think 65 games.
Exactly. To win the rookie of the year.
Every bit of 60 for sure. And that's not even putting labels and titles and awards and anything else on him. I'm just saying, like, that's what I need to see from him.
Okay.
To be able to solidify anything, because at the end of the day, it's not about how many points he's gonna average and this and that. I mean, it's first year. I remember all of our first day on our job. Nobody came in and killed it right off the rip. Sometimes not even in your first year. Sometimes you're gonna get that first one out the way to really, develop and establish, exactly who you are going to be in this league. And I think that's something that's going to take time. He's not different. He's not a robot. He's human, breathing in the same oxygen we breathe in every day. So I think the main thing is just being fair to him. But I just want to see a healthy guy, because the last thing I want, if things do or don't work out, is people going and blaming, injuries or something else.
That's a fact, man. And I hope he does play at least 65 games, because under the new CBA, I think in order to qualify or win the rookie of the year, a rookie or a player has to play at least 65 games, man. You just dropped so much information, man. Like, I agree with you. I think San Antonio was a great landing spot for Wemby with Coach Pop, man. He has that experience with international players, foreign players, specifically French players, and Tony Parker and Boris Diaw. Pop has that credibility and that experience with two #1 picks, big men, and David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Even though their games are different, he does have that experience. It has that credibility. I'm sure you saw that picture of the old school Spurs. They cuffed him up early, man. As soon as he got drafted, they took him to dinner. They schooled him. They talked to him, man. So they're off to a great start. And I'm mad because at least 5 times during this interview or this podcast, you done said something I was going to say, so I had to like scramble and just saying like change up my answer, my question. But I definitely agree with the Bo comparison. I mean, pardon me, everybody's going crazy about Wemby, but I feel like Bo possesses the same skill set. You know what I'm saying? 7'3", 7'4", got a 3 ball, can cross you, got a little handle, can shoot, defend, and everything. I think Bo's his impediment to succeeding in the league is the injury, like you said, and like being in Denver's a doghouse for a little while. And you're right too, man. People forget that Zion was a crazy name. People were clamoring over Zion, the Zion sweepstakes. They were tanking for him. I'm just thinking about in my lifetime, like these are like the players that have so much hoopla. We weren't alive, or I was, you weren't, you're a young dog, but Magic had a lot of hoopla coming out. LeBron, obviously, Zion, KG, because he was like the first coming out of high school, not to this limit, but up there. Wemby, and people forget about Shaq. People was going crazy for Shaq too when he came out, expecting the whole world, and he delivered. And to your point, though, man, you got to have humble expectations. Everybody's not going to come in and take the league by storm. Yeah, Carmelo averaged 21 his rookie year. LeBron 20.9. Mike came in, averaged like 29 a game as a rookie. Shaq did 23. I know Shaq did 23 and 12. So I think we need to temper our expectations. But for me, I do feel like Wemby needs to play at least 65 games. And I feel like he can do like 17. I see him doing like 17.8 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. So I see him doing like 17, 7 to 5 this year. I think that's reasonable this year.
I agree.
Yeah, but like we both said earlier in the show, we got Chet Holmgren as the front runner to win Rookie of the Year, correct?
I don't know if I'm gonna go and be in the front runner. I mean, I'm
Okay.
be honest with you. I don't know where this is gonna go and how much of this will, that the awards are based off of how well the play, that the teams do and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm gonna go with Chet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even sure that I'm gonna go with Wemby as much as I think the league want to see it happen. I might roll with Scooter.
So I love Scoot, bro. And listen, his game is so enormous. He's the kind of player that plays bigger than his actual size. Like Donovan Mitchell. I think they list him at 6'1". But when he be out there booming on folks, you think he like 6'4", 6'5". You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Donnie Mitchell 6'1", bro. Believe it or not, my height, booming on folks. Uh and my comp for Scoot Henderson, I seen a lot of Ant-Man in him, like Anthony Edwards. But Anthony Edwards is like 6'4", 6'5". I looked at the press sheet. I think Scoot is listed at 6'2", bro. I couldn't believe it. Like he's smaller than I thought he
Yeah,
was.
I think Donovan Mitchell is a good comparison for Scoot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could pass it better than Mitchell can.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Mitchell is a bad passer, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that Scoot has a little bit, a smidgen more natural passing ability than Donovan Mitchell does. But both of them explosive players at the rim,
Right.
and both of them high level, athletes and competitors.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact. Hey, well, DT, I want to thank you so much, man, for dropping by. We gotta do this again, man. A long time happening. You scooted so much, dropped so much information for us to go home, take home, and process, chew on, and digest, man. Very insightful, enlightening expertise as usual. That's why I had you on here. We're gonna have you back, man, to follow up with the free agency and check on us for like during the summer league, please, and thank you, man.
No doubt. Looking forward to doing it on the next one, man. Whenever you need me, just let me
Yes,
know.
sir. Before you out, any shout outs?
No, man. Listen, I mean, to my dude Dice, man, putting it
Oh,
together, inviting me out, man, and doing your
man.
thing, dude. I'm proud of you, boy. I'm really
Yes,
happy for you, man, and just hustling and just grinding, man. Just keep at it, and that within itself, man, is putting a smile on my face. If I
wow.
get, if I get I can get the message or the call from it doesn't matter Sirius or Fox or whoever this or that, and I might give second thoughts to it, but
Mm.
if DiceyWorld need me, I'm gonna be right here showing up every time.
My man, I like that. I appreciate that. All right, man. Until next time, I appreciate you, D Tate. All right. That's my man, D Tate. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, so much to chew on. Like I just said, D Tate. Now you can see why he's the expert, why he's the man and such a demand during college basketball. He's the expert. Everybody's just hitting his lineup. Nobody in America knows college basketball like my man DeShaun Tate. So I want to thank him once again for dropping by and blessing us on Dicey World. All right, everybody. Well, this was a great episode. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot. Uh, my information as usual. Check me out at Dicey World. Twitter, DiceyW0RLD, Instagram, DiceyW0RLD.C0M. And remember, boys and girls, anything can happen in Dicey World. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.